Hi friends, thanks for joining me today. I realize that this is a weird sort of year for Thanksgiving with COVID and everything. A lot of us are staying home. Some of us may have never made Thanksgiving before, and this is the first year we're kind of seeing, okay, I gotta do something and figure out how to cook and all that. So what I would like to do is just propose a couple of things to make, and today I'm just starting with a butternut squash and green apple soup. It would make a lovely appetizer, and one of the things you can do, Thanksgiving prep is a lot of work on the day of, and sometimes the day before, because a lot of times you do stuff the day before to lessen what you're doing on the day of. So it's nice to have something that you make earlier in the week, say on Tuesday when Thanksgiving's on Thursday, and have that on Tuesday and Wednesday as your meal for dinner. And then you can even use it for appetizer on Thursday on Thanksgiving. So it's a great soup. It's a nice, you blend it at the end, so it's a nice creamy texture. Got a couple things here to start with. We'll get to the butternut squash, obviously a key ingredient. We're also going to use a green Granny Smith apple, and it calls for onion and carrots and potatoes, and also leek. And you may not be familiar with leeks, but it's kind of like a spring onion that just got pumped full of steroids. But so it's a nice thick white base. What you're going to do is cut off the top and cut off the bottom and then clean it up, but we'll get to that. First, I've already prepped a couple of items right now. I've peeled the carrots and the potatoes, and actually I will go ahead and start with the leek. We're going to go leek and then onion first because we're going to saute that in the stock pot. I have a nice heavy Dutch oven stock pot that's great for making soups. Lots of things really. I've already rinsed the outside of this leek off, so what I'm going to do is, starting where it fades from that white into that green, I'm going to cut that off, because that part just loses a lot of the tenderness and some of that flavor. I'm also these can get really dirty on the inside, and sometimes they're just clean and absolutely beautiful, but other times they're really dirty. So go ahead and cut the stump off here, and then you're left with this for right now. This is a really, really huge leek. A lot of times when I order leeks from the store, they come in 2s or 3s, which are about half the diameter of this, but this works. We'll go with it. So I'm gonna cut it in half again. You can see. And cutting into it, I can see some dirt. My lighting is not great in here, but can you see some of that dirt coming into it? We want to get that out because we don't really want to be eating that. But one of the nice things that you can do is, if you just cut it in half, fray it, and run the water through it on both sides. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Kind of enough of a stream to get some of that dirt washed off. Do that side. Drain it. And then we'll do the other side. Same thing. Just open up those leaves a little bit, rinse it out. I'm not doing this today, but I have a great recipe I haven't made in years that calls for leeks. It's a potato leek soup, and that's wonderful too. It comes from my sister, but unfortunately my kids don't like potatoes all that much. They're not going to mind this though, because it's all blended up and they won't even know what's really in it. It's one of those sneaker foods that you can sneak lots of good veggies in. So once again, because I am blending it, it's really not going to matter how rough I cut it. Normally if I'm cutting things, I'm going to actually have the chunks that I'm ingesting, I want a certain texture, so I'm going to cut it a certain way. Because it's going to be blended, it really doesn't matter. So I'll even keep it just in half like this, and then just do some rough cuts going across the grain. And then I'll do the other side. I make this soup all year long. I love fall soups, fall and winter soups. My kids didn't eat soup for a while. They're very diverse in what they eat, but soup just wasn't one of them, or potatoes. So we've kind of missed out, but they're coming around now. They're getting a little bit older, and I'm glad to be able to get back into my soups again. It's a great way to use up ingredients and make even things that you haven't even thought about or had recipes for. So I'm just going to shoot this all into the pot, just like that. And then we're going to need to dice up an onion. So I'll just put the whole thing in. It'll add a lot of nice flavor. I'm going to cut off both ends. That's how I like to start with cutting. It's interesting when you get to cooking with people, the different ways they've learned, whether through their own parents or whether through their own experimentation, how to cut things. In our household, cutting an onion has been a source of a few arguments in our time between my husband and myself. There's really no right or wrong way. It's just a preference. For many things, like if I'm making a spaghetti sauce or something like that, I don't want to have those chunks that you bite into. I don't want to notice it. I just want to have it there, flavor it, and it just blend away into what I'm cooking. And so I tend to mince mine really fine so it cooks up and dissolves in a sense. It's not exactly dissolved, but you don't really, it's so soft you just don't even notice it. So I start by cutting my onions in half and then going with the grain before I cut across the grain. Now, this is also, like I said before, just a soup, but it doesn't really matter how thick you're going to cut stuff, so I'm going to cut it a lot thicker now. And just go across the grain. It's kind of freeing because for me, trying to keep it all together and cut as small as I want it for an onion, it does make you feel a little bit uptight and painstaking, but it's freeing when you can just do bigger chops. Well, this is even smaller than we need. Alright. Cooking for years, so I have a tendency to want to keep things really even. Alright, so I'm scraping that again into my pot. And let's see, what are we going to do now? I'm going to refer back to my recipe, so I have the onions, I have the leeks, and now I'm going to start sauteing them. And what I'm going to do to saute them is I'm going to put a lot of times they just think that you can get as soft as you want just sauteing in a little butter. I feel like that's never soft enough for me. It doesn't matter so much with this, but I am going to saute in a little butter to give some flavor, and then I'm going to quickly add in some broth. Just have a little bit of butter here. I'm just going to plop that in. And then we'll move that over to the stove right here. Turn that on and let that get going. That'll take a few minutes to cook down, and I don't know if you ever shop at Costco. I love shopping at Costco and getting the rotisserie chickens. That's a great deal because it's like $5 for a chicken. You get all the meat from the chicken, use that for salads, for dishes during the week, and then just take all those bones, cover it with water, throw in some old onion or carrot and some salt, and then just boil it down. You get nice homemade chicken stock. I never buy chicken stock, but if I can get chicken stock every time I get a Costco chicken, it's a great way to make the most bang for your buck. So I'll let that go. It is, however, not great as far as environmentally friendly because I do use plastic for that. Trying to get away from a lot of those plastic use in general. Do you have any great substitutes for what to freeze something like that in? Give me some ideas. I'm always looking to get around the plastic. Alright, so that's cooking up really nice. Starting to smell it. It smells good. Starting to get coated in that nice love of butter. And that'll continue to cook down a little bit. I'm going to make sure the butter's all melted. And then we'll throw in the broth. And this calls for 2 cups. It's actually 4 cups of chicken stock. You can see that's what it's looking like now. You can hear it sizzling. Great sign. While that's going on, and I'll be sure to keep checking that in the meantime, I'm going to peel my green apple and cut everything else up. Already washed it, so I'm just going to peel it. Get a nice peel going. Probably about in time that is all peeled. I'll check on my onions and leeks with the butter, see how that's doing. If it's starting to look pretty translucent, then I'll add the stock and let that start to cook down. Because the stock it's frozen, so it needs to take some time to thaw. If you're just using regular chicken stock that you buy from the store, look at that nice long peel. And just go ahead and add it in and it'll start cooking down on that. Alright, I'm going to chop all this up. Now one great time saver you could do that I did not do was you can buy from the grocery store already cut up butternut squash. It is a bit of a pain to cut, I find. I'm going to check on this. In true confession, I sometimes do need my husband to get in there and get the first cut going. Alright, so I'm opening up the chicken stock. One thing I do like with these baggies is that then I just rip it open and put it in. Alright, so that's one, and I have 2 of these bags for 4 cups. One open going. Alright. So time to get chopping. That's just going to cook, and there's plenty of liquid in there. Keep going. Alright, so move this back. There we go. If you have a little bit of skin left, don't fret it because it's going to get blended. This is my shortcut cutting up an apple way. That probably I did learn from my husband because I would more painstakingly cut it in half and then cut out all the little core bits. I am a little bit more particular than my husband as far as the core bits, but I don't want to eat that hard bit. So what are you guys doing for Thanksgiving? What do you normally do? We often go up and see family in Maryland and in Pennsylvania. My in-laws usually get together that Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is convenient that we can have separate days. Although sometimes with kids we don't even make it up, depending on the year. It's been a little bit hard. I know a lot of you with young kids can relate to traveling with them, especially in the wintertime when roads can get icy and slick. Alright, so chopped up apple. I'm going to chop up some potato. Just cutting it in half. Woo! A little slick. Alright, and then big chunks, it doesn't matter, right? Big chunks doesn't matter. When I cut it up, I'll just put it into the pot and let it get cooking that way. Alright. Let's see, I'm gonna go this way. I feel like I need to sharpen my knives is what I need to do. If you want a great sharpener, this is a few bucks online, and it sharpens it up pretty nicely and pretty quickly. Knife is a little dirty, so I'm not going to have time to do it right now. I'll do it later. Alright. I'm curious too about this whole potato thing. I've met so many people that have kids and around my kids' ages, and they too have struggled to get their kids to like potatoes. Now, French fries and chips, like, I don't think that's ever been a problem, but like mashed potatoes, like, isn't that just kind of that plain food you always thought about growing up that everybody ate? Apparently not anymore. So carrots and just doing chunks like that to cook down. Now, normally if I was making a soup, I was just going to eat all the pieces. I would kind of eat really nicely. I've gotten some people's soups that I've tried over the years where it's like these big chunks of carrot that like random cutting textures. I don't understand it sometimes. Not to be judgy, but you know, all of us have what we like and we don't like. Alright. And then just that. Quickly cut. Ooh, we gotta run away. And I already peeled these. Some people will eat the skin. I don't know about that. It's what you're used to, I guess. Okay. So have everything except for the butternut squash, which butternut squash doesn't really take very much time to cook down once it gets in there. So I'm just going to get these in. It's not really going to matter. It's a very forgiving soup. Here you can see. Very forgiving soup, you know, just that's one thing I love about blended soups is it is so forgiving. Basically put everything in the pot, get it to a boil, cover it for 20 minutes, and boom, you got food. Alright. Now the butternut squash is so tricky. But I'm going to wash it first because I did not wash it yet. Put a little soap on it. It's not going to penetrate, but it's going to clean out some of that yucky stuff you don't want. Some of us in life may be a little more germ conscious than others, but excuse me for thinking of it, but what does that remind you of? I don't know. Sorry. Okay. So let me start. I'm just going to cut off the ends first and make it a little bit You know, one trick I heard, and I always forget about doing it, is actually using a pumpkin knife to cut squash. Well, that wasn't working so well. There we go. Ta-da! Ooh. That doesn't look the healthiest. Maybe that's why it was black. It's okay, we're going to scoop it out. And I just cut off that part. Normally I scoop it out, but this does not look very good. Looks like it got a little rot in the... Probably because of that little indentation we were talking about. Well, I'm not losing too much with it. Pull this out. Alrighty, and I'm just gonna get the skin off. It's a really thick skin, and I'm not gonna expect to get everything off. I'm just gonna take some of that, those thickest parts off. It's always interesting when you cook squash. You ever get those and handle it? You ever get the little white film on your hand that dries on there? Alright, so get all that. My kids are playing in the woods behind our house, which my kitchen has a nice view of. It's nice to get them outside right now in these pandemic times. They're home currently doing virtual school. Alright, so you can see I didn't get like a picture perfection, but it's enough to make a little bit of the tender skin and get that really tough part off. I'm going to peel this one now too, and then we'll chop it up. I could have peeled it already, but it's good sometimes to see the unusual things that you don't buy on a normal basis being prepared and how to prepare them. And I hope that you guys are feeling comfortable with what you're making and finding ways that even when you're not able to see family, being able to virtually connect with them. I know we'll be able to do that with a Zoom call or one of the other video calls that we're going to use. One thing that's kind of nice with it is that my sister, who lives on the other side of the country, can actually join in. It's one of those things when you get together for holidays, you always think to call the person that isn't there, except people just never do. Alright, so I'm going to cut that down into some chunks. I can smell my soup with that chicken stock already going. It smells good. Alright, I'm just slice this nice and easy. At this point, it's not a little bit sticky because it gets that little residue that wants to, it's probably a starch, you know, it's a starchy vegetable. It sticks to your knife. Get this side. One thing that's really good you think about a blended soup like this, it's kind of like when you have tomato soup growing up, the Campbell's kind, you know. We'd always have grilled cheese and tomato soup. So I like to make this soup and then make a gourmet grilled cheese with like a Jarlsberg or a Gouda or something, or a couple combinations of different cheeses on some fancy bread. Today I bought a loaf of rosemary olive oil bread. Gives a nice flavor. Alright, plenty of squash, even with those bad pieces I had to get rid of. And I'll just slide this in. Whoosh. All mixed around. And I know I'm going to want some salt, so I'm going to add it here. The recipe, I originally got it from a friend years ago. And it just calls salt and pepper for taste, but I tend to find, like, start with a teaspoon. Like, you can always add more, but start with a teaspoon for something like this, big soup, pot of soup, because you really need about that level of base level to feel like there's any flavor going on there. I'm going to wash my hands up and put that salt in. It's kind of nice cooking and having somebody out there watch it. I don't know if you're watching, but it's nice to cook with people even if I can't see them, so maybe just drop me a comment and say hi. Alright, teaspoon. There we go. Alright, so now I'm just gonna stir it all up. I'll let you take a look at it and see. So that's what we got so far. It's cooking away, getting soft on those vegetables, and the last thing that's going to happen, really, sorry, I'm blocking the camera, I'm just going to add some wine and evaporated milk and sour cream once that cooks down. It's going to take about 20 minutes, okay? I'll show you that if I can figure out technology.